You're listening to On Mission with Dr. Matt Davis, a podcast designed to explore the personal mission of everyday leaders. Hear from men and women who are making a difference in their corner of the world and discover what keeps them on mission.
Welcome to On Mission with Dr. Matt Davis. I'm Jonathan Sheely. Joining us today is Gary Garrison, an associate professor at Maranatha School of Education. Gary and his wife Janet live in Watertown and have 3 grown children. His favorite meal is barbecue ribs, and his favorite hobbies include spending time with his wife, reading, running, and collecting baseball cards. His favorite sports team is the Cincinnati Reds. Gary, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, you are a baseball coach. You have coached the Maranatha team for many, many, many years, and this will be the first season coming up where you are in a different role in respect to coaching, but also just a general kind of sports fan. And I'm looking forward to this conversation today to talk about how athletics and education can be influential beyond just the X's and O's.
Sure.
And I'm looking forward to that. We've had a few podcasts with Maranatha coaches and explored the approach to that, the mission behind it, which is a much different philosophy, really. And yet you're also an educator and a frequent speaker on the Christian Education Convention Tour. I know you've done a lot of workshops and kind of been sought after in that mode. In fact, I talked to somebody yesterday that you haven't had an impact on, and I said, how do you know Coach Garrison? Because they put you down as a reference. And I'm like, I didn't see any overlap, right? And he said, well, when I was a student teacher, he was my cooperating teacher down in like Georgia or wherever you used to live.
I know.
That's a long-term impact that, we can have in education. So I'm looking forward to talking about some of that. Your wife is probably, I don't want to offend anybody, but the greatest kindergarten teacher in the universe. Would you agree with that?
I would vote for that.
Right.
Yes, I would vote for
you
that.
Would, and
yes.
me both, because my boys had the privilege, and I don't want to make you feel old, but Eric is a freshman in college this year. Okay.
Thanks, Matt.
So, but man, I still know very well the color system and all the things that my boys lived through in that mode. And I'm so thankful for Christian educators who really came alongside us as parents to help, establish our young people. And so your legacy is a very long one, and I'm looking forward to that. Jonathan said that your hobbies include spending time with Janet,
Of course.
Reading, running, and collecting baseball cards. All right, so let me ask you about your baseball card collection. What is your favorite card, and what is your probably most valuable card? Maybe it's the same one. I don't know.
No, it's not. Ironically, it's not the same. Growing up, I was a huge Johnny Bench fan. I've been a Cincinnati Reds fan for most of my life, and Johnny Bench was my boyhood idol, I suppose, on a baseball field anyway. And so I've got some cards of Johnny Bench's. I've gotten his autograph, and
Ooh, cool.
So I had a chance to meet Johnny Bench. But that's not my most valuable one. I had I don't have it anymore. It's a long story, but I had a 57 Mickey Mantle card, and I had a 1957 Ted Williams card that were very valuable. One was valued at $1,300. The other one was valued at $900. And so they're vintage cards, and those are the ones that have value. But those are my 2 prized possessions.
In business law, we study a baseball card case where a guy was sold a fake. Oh. And he didn't discover it was a fake for 12 years until he turned around and tried to sell it.
Yeah.
And they said, we got bad news. Well, he had it authenticated when he bought it. And the guy just messed up and told him incorrectly that it was real. And so you can imagine there were a lot of litigation over that because it was like a $60-something thousand mistake. So I know these things supposedly have value. I'm just not sure why. It's just a little piece of cardboard with a picture and some stats on it.
Yes, but it reminds us, more elderly, maybe should I say, of our boyhood followings, what we treasured and valued as boys. And the times have changed a little bit, but we followed baseball very closely when I was adolescent. And so we had boyhood heroes, and we took baseball cards to school and traded them. That's why sometimes they're referred to as trading cards.
Right.
We traded baseball cards. We pitched them against the wall. Whoever got the closest to the wall got to all of those. Maybe. Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah. Okay. I let the secret out, but.
What did you call that?
It wasn't good on the cards because our cards got damaged. They were all rounded corners, but it was a lot of fun.
Did you ever put them in your bike tire?
Yes, I did.
Course.
Yes.
They wear out quick though. The cardboard ones.
I hadn't thought about that in years, and I had a guy on our street. He's probably 9, 10. And he came buzzing by, and my 4-year-old son was like, I want to do that. And I was like, you know what? None of the cards that I still have are we putting on your bike tire.
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, maybe your business card. You can put that
exactly. It's a good idea. I got all kinds of card stuff.
And there are thousands of men today who would say, my mom threw my baseball card collection out.
I had Honus Wagner,
exactly
right.
That's right.
Yeah. That's for sure. And it does. It reminds us. It kind of takes you back. There's more. It's tactile. It's not something that's digital. It's
right.
It's
takes you back
real.
to your youth. Right.
Yeah.
It does take you back.
And they were kind of limited edition. That's what gave them some value too, right? Like you bought a pack. You never know what you were going to get. You kind of had the anticipation that maybe a good one would be in there.
Yeah. And the supply was so small in those days, and that market just exploded. The supply really took off and mushroomed, and so it brought the value of cards way down.
They used to come with a little piece of bubble gum in there.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
Oh, yeah.
So the worst gum ever manufactured. You take that gum, throw it away.
I used to get them at Christmas time. They were like a stocking stuffer.
Yeah.
I had a couple of packs.
Well, for sure. Now, barbecue, is there a particular kind? Because, this Jonathan's from Kansas City area, so is that kind of your style too, or do you like them?
Jonathan would know Gates Barbecue.
Absolutely.
Of course. But just at home, just barbecue sauce. Casey Masterpiece is kind of my favorite.
Did you know Casey Masterpiece is made in Wisconsin?
Let's
I
go.
did not know that.
That ruined my
I
childhood.
did not know that.
New York City.
You know that line.
Get a rope.
That's right. Great stuff.
Yeah,
You guys remember that?
Yeah, I
don't
do.
think that's
I
a
do.
very politically correct
No, it's not.
commercial anymore, but
No.
that was a classic.
Classic.
All
Yeah,
right.
but that's good barbecue though, because Gates is like old school Kansas City
Yes.
too. Like it's like when I tell people like what they know I'm from Kansas City, they're gonna go through the city and they're gonna get some barbecue. They'll text me, hey, where am I supposed to go? And Gates downtown is the right one to go to, or off of 40 Highway.
Yeah.
And I say, if you feel like the health inspector hasn't been there in a while, you're in the right spot.
Yeah.
Right? Like the grease on the wall, the smoke from
Contributes
the
to
it
the
contributes to the
Yeah.
flavor.
And when you have to wait to get in the door.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Jonathan's going to hit you with a deep question to start things off here this morning.
Coach, what's your personal mission statement?
Well, I realized years ago that the Lord has given me a ministry of edification, and just the opportunity to sit in classrooms every day and try to encourage and strengthen young people who are in a stage of life that I was in quite a few years ago. But I remember those days as being very needy days and needing someone to come alongside me. And so the Lord's really kind of planted that in my heart. In some ways, that's a little challenging. I was thinking about this earlier today. Being in an environment like I teach in and coached in for all those years, there are many, many days that I come to school in the morning and go home after school, and I teach with Christian leaders. I teach Christian students. And so there are many, many days I never encounter a lost person. So it's a bit of a challenge. And I tell students sometimes if I don't stop for milk or bread or gas or something on the way home, I never encounter a lost person. That's a little bit of a challenge, and I have to kind of work at that. But yeah, the Lord's really given me the love of edifying people and trying to be an encouragement to them, seeing their strength in their walk.
How did you get into this? What was sort of the pull for you as a young person to pursue education? I mean, you teach in a couple of different programs here at Maranatha, but PE would be kind of the primary one that you oversee. And you've seen lots and lots of students come through that you've been able to impact, but you couldn't have known that early on. So what was the initial interest for you that kind of sparked your path into education, athletics, coaching, and that whole career?
Interesting question. I went to college. The first year of college, I went and became an electronics major. I always enjoyed taking things apart, putting them back together, motors, those kinds of things, transistor radios, those days.
Was this like 1970s? Mid-70s?
It would have been, I graduated high school in 74, and so about 76. I sat out a year right after high school. Had no intention of going to college. It's kind of a long story, but went to school in 76 and decided I'd major in electronics because that's something I thought I could be good at. And the Lord changed that direction rather quickly. When I talked to my faculty advisor, we won't go into all that, but when I talked to my faculty advisor, he said, yeah, it was going to take you longer than you probably anticipated. So ironically, I went back to my dorm room, opened up the college catalog, and on a whim, and I know the Lord did this, but on a whim, I just decided that I'm going to be a PE major because I was an athlete in high school. My coaches were my PE teachers, and I always got an A in PE, and so I thought it'll be.
Did anyone not get an A in PE?
Yes, they did.
That's back in the day. All right.
But anyway, the Lord used that to really change my direction, and it was.
What sports did you play in high school?
Baseball and basketball.
Both.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's kind of challenging too, to juggle two sports and academics.
Primarily baseball, though. I
that was
baseball.
Your sport.
That was my sport.
So basketball kind of got you in shape for baseball. You were good to go. There's not too much overlap in those.
My friends played.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Did you always play growing up in the summer?
Yes, all the way up. Started as I told the guys on the team last year. Last year was my 19th year to coach at Maranatha, and I started playing baseball on an organized team when I was 9 years old, and then I stopped playing or being involved with baseball at age 66. So if you can do that math, that's okay. That's quite a span, but just so thankful that the Lord allowed me to be in that position that many years. 19 here at Maranatha and 42 years of being a baseball coach.
Did you also play baseball in college?
I did. Played here.
Yeah. So when you were on the collegiate baseball team and the high school baseball team, did you ever have an injury or something that kind of set you back in that, or did you stay pretty healthy throughout?
I stayed pretty healthy in high school. I did. I didn't. I was a catcher, which ironically.
I was going to ask what position you played.
I was a catcher, and ironically, I had a sore arm from time to time. My knees would get a little sore, but nothing major. I've looked at, so many catchers have 3 and 4 knee surgeries, and I had none of that.
Wow. Well, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
You must have good technique.
Until I got a little older, then I had some cartilage trouble.
I don't know if we can blame catching for that.
Not necessarily. Right,
so,
right.
I always liked to be the catcher. I was a small kid on the team, but everybody wanted to be the catcher because you got all that cool equipment, And then you experience what it's like, and you're like, I don't want to be the catcher anymore. And then there's the whole deal of when your team's up to bat and you're getting closer to your time to come up to bat, and do I take off? You kind of judging the guys in front of you like, do I take off the shin guards or do I leave them on? Right. What's the likelihood? We got 2 outs.
The eyes when you're like, don't put me behind you.
Yeah, right.
I'm just going to leave these on for now. Okay, he ground out to first base. Yeah, we're done. But yeah, you play some long, hot summer games in the catching gear. It's not the most comfortable place.
It's not. No, it's not.
But
you're involved in every play.
Yeah, is that what you liked about it? I mean,
I did.
What you don't realize in Little League, not in this way, but as you get higher in the ranks, the catcher is one of the smartest guys on the field because he's really calling the pitches and controlling a lot of the game from a position that doesn't get a lot of publicity, right?
Well, thank you for saying that. It makes me feel better.
There you go.
Well, it's a coach on the field a lot of times.
They call him the field general. Oftentimes he's referred to as the field general, the catcher.
And there's probably a few factors to that, right? Not only is he calling the pitches, but he sees the field in very differently than any other player. He's the only player facing out
with everything in front of him. Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's cool. I never thought too much about that, but I'm sure you've made a career of that. So who do you look for in a catcher? You look for size and you can catch the ball, but you're looking for a little more than that.
But leadership.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to be. I always wanted my catchers to be leaders and be able and be vocal about it.
I played second base. What do you look for in a second baseman?
Stay out of the way. Not really.
That's what I mean.
You walked right into that.
I knew that was the answer. Worst arm, this is a guy that please don't hit the ball to Matt. That's exactly what. In Little League, it's right field, Mr.
Yes.
Obscurity, but not so much in
That's
MLB
correct.
or
Very
in
important.
college.
Very important.
But you got to have a rocket for an arm out there. But second base is definitely your weakest infielder. Yeah, we can hide a guy there.
I was played first and third, and I actually preferred third. I thought it was more fun, and then I grew up, and I'm like, first base was way cooler. Why didn't I double down on playing there?
In addition,
You are
to
left-handed.
I know, that's the thing.
Yeah, that would be tough at third base. But in addition to them hitting the ball very hard toward third base, right?
Right.
They don't
The
call it the
hot
hot corner for nothing.
Yeah, that's for sure. So you end up a PE major, and then did you after you graduate? Did you meet Janet in college?
No, we were both teaching at Christian schools, and about 6 years into my teaching experience, she came along and she was teaching. She was an LEd major, and she was teaching third grade at the time, and we met and I got married then. But that's all I've ever taught. It's all they trust me with. Sorry.
I don't know about that. Wow. So 6 years in, and you said you stayed out a year, so you probably were asking some questions about life at that point.
I was
What did you learn through that process that you might be able to share with somebody in the same boat?
Well, I learned that a man needs a good wife, and I also learned that patience is very important. I wanted to be married during those years, and the Lord just didn't bring the right one along, but I am just so thankful that I was patient. The Lord taught me patience through that, helped me to get grounded during those times. And so when my future wife did come along, I felt like I was quite a bit more stable at that point.
I met Dana in law school, and I've often told her, she doesn't understand what I mean by it, and I'm glad, but I've often told her, if you'd have met me in college, we probably wouldn't be together. There's a seasoning process. Mature. It usually takes guys a little longer, I think, than girls.
I was there.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing to have a couple more years.
Right.
You don't want to wait forever. I think sometimes people put that off, but the patience factor, and then you hit the jackpot, so it was definitely worth.
So thankful for
worth
her.
the wait.
So thankful for her.
Yeah, what a blessing. So God blessed you with a family, and you've even over the years had a chance to teach, I'm sure, and coach some of your own.
I coached both of my sons 4 years in college.
How about that?
Not many can say that.
That
It's
had
a
to
blessing.
be a neat experience.
It was really
too.
neat, really neat experience.
So what is it then about, now that you look at the experience of teaching and, of course, coaching, how do you accomplish this mission of edification, encouragement, and even an element of evangelism through that mode of coaching? What is your approach, or what do you do intentionally that makes that work to be able to carry out that mission in this particular mode?
Well, in those 19 years of coaching on this campus, my challenge to the guys was, what kind of husband are you going to be? What kind of father are you going to be? Those types of things, as opposed to, how many games did we win this year? That we all know that winning is important, and it ought to be an objective, but there's way more depth to challenging young men at 18, 19, 20, and 21 years old to be the right kind of father when those days come along, right kind of husband. I like this quote that someone asked, well, how was your season? Well, ask me in 10 years.
Really?
Because that's when the true impact will be felt. Not this week and not next week, but coaching is leadership, and it's mentorship, and so it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight.
So what kind of coaching energy do you bring? Like, some guys are in your face, yell and scream. Some guys are catatonic on the bench, just barely aware that the game is going on. I'm sure they are, but from outward appearances, they're very internalized. There's in between. How do you approach that from a coaching standpoint?
Well, there are two sides to that. I've never been a screamer, holler, that kind of coach. I've never been laissez-faire either. Just somewhere in the middle of the road there. I like to say hands-on and taking guys individually and just challenging them with getting better at their game. And in turn, I mean, when we're in season, of course, we're looking at their game-to-game, day-to-day improvement. But the long goal is to have them better men, be better men when they get there.
So you mentioned the word individually. You take a different approach with each player as you get to know what their needs are. Sounds like there's a lot of psychology almost involved.
There really is. There really is. I mean, as coaches, if you do it right, you can't address them all the same. Can't treat them all the same. That sounds a little odd, but it really is true because they have different makeups, they have different personalities, and they respond differently to challenge. They respond differently to criticism. They respond differently to praise. So, kind of individual.
I was watching a clip, one of those like locker room pep talk clips, this morning. Actually, came up on my Twitter feed. X, formerly known as Twitter. Mm-hmm. And did you notice that the AP, that's their new...
It is. You
have to say X, formerly known as Twitter.
Right.
So it came up, and it was the Georgia football coach, and he comes in, and the first thing he says is they're down 2 touchdowns at halftime. And he says, "I was going to tear you all up, but a sports psychologist grabbed me in the hallway before I walked in here." And I thought... Think of the budget that program has to have a sports psychologist on
right
staff.
Before.
But think of the courage of that sports psychologist to grab the Georgia football coach, where football is religious, all right? Right. And say, "Now listen, coach," and she told me not to tear you a new one, and so I'm going to instead take that advice and tell you this: we're not going to win. And he said, "Here's what she told me." And, I mean, here's the coach. He's supposed to be giving the pep talk. He's talking about the pep talk he got. He says, "She told me, you're not going to crawl out of a 2-touchdown deficit on one play." Think about that, right? She said, "You're going to win this game if you focus on the next moment." All right. So he comes in, and then he focused on each guy. You talk about individual. Yeah. And he said to the center, "Your next moment is to snap the ball at the right time. Your next moment is to get that ball in your hands before you drop back. Your next moment, wide receiver, is to win that battle at the line of scrimmage and get off clean." And he just went through. He said, "Our next moment, what's the next moment? Catch the ball on the kickoff, and it comes down to, yes, you want to win and be a championship, quote, program over a dynasty of decades of, championships, but that's not how you get there. You get there one sort of building block moment at a time. And I wonder how you might apply that, not just in baseball, but in the overall mission that you're talking about here of trying to build somebody for a lifetime. But where does that kind of come back to the beginning?
Well, as you said before, kind of challenging them individually. In the years that I coached baseball here, I encountered a lot of guys who the ball was hit to them and they say, "Okay, and what should I do now?" Well, I tell them it's way too late for that. You should have had that play in mind. And that's true in life as well. I was just talking this week in a class about situations that are going to come up in your life, and you need to have thought those through. The left fielder with a runner at first base and the ball's hit down the left field line, he needs to know where he's throwing the ball before he gets to the ball, and he needs to line himself up for that. Now that's a little baseball intensive maybe, but it's certainly a life principle. There are going to be in these students' lives, I just talked about it this week in class, there are going to be instances in their lives where they're going to be challenged. They're going to be tempted with things that they should have thought about before and had a good answer. It's not, well, I don't think my mom would like that, or I don't think my youth pastor would support that. No, that's not necessarily a good answer, right? Those are good factors to consider, but they need to have thought that through and have an answer before the temptation or the question comes up.
That is a very unique thing to baseball. I mean, in every sport you try and think ahead, but most sports are so much more dynamic than baseball. And so I wonder if you could, I'm sure you've spent a lot of time thinking about the differences of baseball as a sport and what you can kind of learn from those more so about life than maybe you feel other sports that are more fast-paced and dynamic on the field.
You're right. It's a very unique sport in that there's a lot of downtime. And I have people tell me, baseball's boring. And I say, well, baseball's only boring if you're not thinking, because there's a lot that goes on between each pitch. The outfielders shift, the infielders shift. They're gonna read the hitter's hands. All those things come into play, and it's so applicable to life that there are just so many factors that we need to be alert to, especially as Christians. We just need to know how to respond to certain situations. And I think a lot of young people, they get caught off guard, and a lot of baseball players get caught off guard, and so it teaches us so much about life.
When you lose concentration and you lose track of what the game situation is, and this happens to umpires too.
Oh, yeah.
I saw an umpire the other day that lost track of how many outs there were in the inning, and he thought it was the third out, and it was only the second out. Mm-hmm. He trotted off, and the play was still going on. So, there's a YouTube account like Audit the Umpires or something like that. It's depressing how bad, for you, it'll just confirm every suspicion you already had that umpires are blind and ill-intentioned.
Okay. That's taken it to another level.
All right, I'm just kidding. But no, it is a human element, that is part of that. And if you do lose concentration or you lose the game situation and the awareness, you don't know the next thing to do. But it's very knowable. And it's very precise and almost prescripted on what that next right thing is to do. And that doesn't mean you can execute it just if you know it, but you can't execute it if you don't know it.
That's true.
So that's for sure.
Well, you take 9 guys on the field, and if one of those guys has a mental lapse during the moment like this, we all 9 lose, right? Even the guys on the bench, we all pay for that. And isn't that a life lesson?
Yeah.
Talk about teamwork and collaboration.
When you talk about building an individual for a lifetime, I suppose it goes beyond the 9 guys that are on the field. And you've always got guys on the bench. And, I've rode a lot of benches in my athletic career, picked a lot of splinters, as they say.
Yeah.
And how do you keep those guys engaged? And what is it that they get out of a season when maybe they don't see the field as much? I've talked to some athletes recently about they're a little frustrated. They're not getting the playing time that they'd like, as a freshman when they walk on.
Yeah,
and what can that person take from the experience of maybe not seeing the field as much?
Well, one challenge that I've liked to put before them is you never know that guy that's playing your position. Number one, you should be rooting for him. First of all, don't be so selfish that you can't root for your teammate, because when he wins, we win. But the challenge being, when you're sitting on that bench, you need to stay engaged with the game. You need to know the score. You need to know the outs. You need to know the scenario, because you don't know when that guy's going to twist an ankle or blow a knee, and now you're up. It's next man up, and that might come sooner than you think.
Yeah. And there's ways to contribute to the team's success other than being on the field. And I've seen that with your team, so you must emphasize that in some ways.
Yeah, keeping charts on the bench and those types of things.
Even the energy. I mean, from the dugout. It's apparent to me. You had a player a couple seasons ago. I'm not sure he ever made the field. I'm sure you gave him an opportunity in a blowout to go play. I never saw it, but he was the most energetic, encouraging guy in the dugout. Like, now maybe that gets annoying after a while. I'm like, settle down, we're losing 11-0.
No.
But you know, you got to have those guys that just they're for others. You know, they're focused on others. And I remember thinking about that kid. You know, that's the kind of guy you want to have around, not just on a team, but in a workplace or in a friend group or at church. You know, folks that can take something positive out of maybe even a negative situation, and even for themselves. It's clear it wasn't about him. You know, it was all about the team.
It's about community. It's about community. And I tell guys, look, you're going to be a member of a team the rest of your life. You're going to be a team member in your family. You're going to be a team member at your workplace. You're going to be a team member at your church. What kind of teammate are you going to be? It teaches us so much.
I was just listening to a story of a coach talk about a team member who, like you were talking about, maybe didn't get a lot of playing time, wasn't most technically accurate, but he put in his effort. He was always the first one there, always the last one out. And when they had an opportunity to travel to a championship, it wasn't even a question of the captains whether or not that guy was coming, even though he probably wasn't going to get a single minute of playing time in a national championship situation.
Right.
That person was the glue that kept the energy of the whole team together. And what a great thing for a Christian to think about. We may not be it may not be the top dog. We may not be the one pulling out the millions of dollars in contracts, that kind of thing, in a sports illustration kind of way. But we can certainly be the one that's encouraging, that's different, that is rooting for the team in a new way.
When you talk to a parent who's thinking about sending their kid off to college, and maybe they're concerned about balancing athletics with academics, maybe they are considering between colleges, what's the statement? You know, I've got a son that plays here on the soccer team, and I know this firsthand, but I wonder from somebody that is considering that, as a coach, how do you articulate to those parents the value and maybe what they could expect their young person to experience?
Well, we've been blessed here on our campus, as you know, with wonderful, godly coaches who really take a personal interest in their players and mentoring them. And I would challenge parents, particularly moms. It kind of comes down to moms when you're recruiting a player. The old saying is, if you win mom, you get the kid. You know, a lot of truth in that, of course. But I would challenge them with, who is it that's going to be mentoring your son? I mean, some of these guys on our campus may be considered other schools as well. You need to take a hard look at who they're going to be spending time with, who they're going to be impacted by, and who's going to mentor your son or your daughter, for that matter.
Yeah, and it does come down to, what do I want to be? Who do I want to be like?
Exactly.
We sort of end up being like the mentors that contributed to us. You mentioned before we started that you had some mentors in your own life as a coach and as a man. What elements from them do you now look back on your career and see kind of became part of your persona, your reality?
Well, I got saved as a seventh grade boy, and my pastor really came alongside of me. I didn't come from a Christian home, but my pastor came alongside of me and really mentored me during those early Christian years. And the one word that I would put next to his name is patience. I mean, he was very patient with me. And so I just so thankful for that. Didn't quit on me. Could have easily quit on me, but didn't. Kind of hung in there. And I've had a couple other mentors. I don't know if I should mention names or not.
Yeah, you can. That's fine.
Well, my first college experience, I taught and coached with a man named Keith Champion.
Yeah.
He's just been a tremendous friend to me. We've remained good friends all these years, and he taught me so much about just how to deal with individual players and that sort of thing. And I go to the Dominican Republic on
I was going to ask you about that
missions trip, but the leader of that trip, Dave Ferguson, he works for Baptist Mid-Mission, one of their vice presidents, and he's just become a real dear brother to me.
So tell me about, with the play ball ministry in the Dominican, how you use baseball in ministry, because that's another kind of key thing here at Maranatha is, whatever your interests and abilities are, athletics, medical, whatever it is, you find a way to use it in ministry. This next summer we've got a musical missions team that's going to head out to South America. So talk to me a little bit about that ministry, how long you've been involved in it, and how you use baseball in ministry.
Sure. I've gone to the Dominican with play ball 12 years now, and the Maranatha team has gone 3 times. But
and even between years, you've had players that go.
Yes. This past summer, Steve Board went with me, and Teddy Haugen went with me as well. So we had 3 from Maranatha campus there at this summers. But kind of the skeletal view of what play ball looks like is we divide the boys into 6 different groups. We have 5 baseball instruction stations, and then we have the gospel station. And they basically rotate clockwise every 30 minutes. So they're spending 30 minutes of infield instruction, outfield instruction, base running, hitting, and throwing. So those 5 baseball specific stations, and then the gospel station, which of course changes every day. But wonderful group of kids, 9 to 12-year-olds essentially. Generally speaking, 9 to 12-year-olds. We have some younger and some older, but just having the opportunity to interact with those boys and sharing Christ with them.
So in 12 years of doing that, I'm sure as you go back, you see the fruit, the lasting fruit and changed lives of people that maybe got saved through that program and now are part of it or supporting that ministry. So the idea isn't just kind of blow in and blow out. There's a sustained presence there.
I'll give you an example of that. This summer when we were in the town is called Bani. It's a very heavy baseball talented place. There was a boy there who came to play ball the first year in 2010. His name is Andy Baez, and Andy came to Christ that first year. Went through the program, helped with the program many years. Went to med school. He's now a doctor in San Domingo, and he came back one day this summer. Just had the day off, and he said, "I just want to come back and see play ball in action again." And he's remained faithful, just a great kid, just really grown up and impacting others. He's a doctor now in San Domingo.
That's incredible.
He was a 9-year-old boy and got saved that first year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Doesn't seem like there's been enough years for that,
Yeah.
that to happen.
He very faithful in his church and just doing very well, began to grow. In addition to that, he came and said, he was the first one to accept Christ in his family. He said, "I really want my mom and dad to get saved. I want my sister to get saved." And we prayed for that to happen. Lo and behold, his sister got saved a few years later. Then his mom got saved. Then his dad got saved. And that was quite a gap between mom and dad getting saved. Dad came to Christ, and then recently, about 2 years ago, 2 years after his salvation, died of a heart attack. And so now he's with the Lord.
Well, praise the Lord, yeah.
It's a great success story.
And that's really what it comes down to, is that play ball and other missions trips that we've gone on, like last summer with the soccer team to Kyrgyzstan, and volleyball went to the Grand Cayman Islands. Some of these are exotic places. Oh, Dominican. People go there for vacation. You don't go there for vacation.
No.
You're not staying at 5-star hotels. I'm sure the accommodations are fine, right?
They're fine.
Do you get air conditioning these days?
Yes, but it's not
Finally?
Punta Cana. It's not.
Yeah. My wife and I went to Punta Cana.
Okay.
It wasn't a mission trip. It was an
different.
anniversary trip. But
Good.
and I thought about you, doing play ball, and I thought, I wonder where on the island that is, because that's got, to me, such an amazing pull to be a part of that. And really life-changing, not just for the young people that you interact with, but I'm sure for you and for the other men that participate.
Well, back to my earlier point of being on campus and just being surrounded by believers, on a daily basis, and sometimes looking for ways to get outside that bubble, if you want to call it that. That's
Here it
it.
is.
I mean, that's
Here it
it
is.
right there.
Amen.
So.
And you do that. You raise the money to do it, and you make that a priority to do it because it's become part of who you are. I mean, doing something a dozen years like that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, those kids get in your blood. They really do.
Yeah. Well, Coach, I appreciate so much you taking the time to share with us your wisdom and experience. It's been a fascinating conversation around a lot of different things and over a long period of time. And that's really the testimony of faithfulness, that I think that faith that stands the test of time, that is one of the reasons I admire you so much. We've served together at church as deacons, and I've seen you as a father and a husband and a teacher, and I appreciate you so much. I appreciate your mentorship of our students, but also your impact on my life.
Wow.
So well done, sir.
The
Thank you so
feeling's
much.
mutual. Appreciate
Amen.
you.
Thank you for joining us today. On Mission is a production of Maranatha Baptist University. Subscribe to On Mission on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to leave a review, as this will help other growing leaders find these conversations. For information about our guests, previous episodes, and general information about On Mission or MBU, go to mbu.edu/podcast. Join us again next week as we examine what keeps leaders on mission.